Feels like I'd have talked about my favorite video game series more than a handful of times on this channel, but seeing as how Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is just days away at this point, I'm running out of time to talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 2. While the original on the Wii is my favorite game of all time, this video isn't about that one, it's about its successor title, which is not a sequel, but more of a sister entry, if that's even a thing, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which is almost 5 years old at this point, and that thought is both awesome, yet terrifying. While both 1 and 2 have great stories, incredible gameplay, majestic OSTs that span multiple genres, wondrous areas to explore, there's one aspect that I think both of these games handle well, but 2 gets the shaft when compared to 1: characters. Thanks to the internet being the internet, the perception of the main protagonist of this game has been memed into oblivion for whatever reason, because if it's not his driver suit, it's his screaming or some other aspect of his character. As for Pyra and Mythra's personalities, everyone is too distracted by their personalities to really care. Or their smashers bitching about how OP she is, which they totally are, but thankfully everyone is too busy trying to figure out how to fight Minecraft Steve or
Kazuya Mishima.
Thanks to the limelight being given to the main characters, the rest of the cast who isn't our Welsh cat queen are sadly overshadowed and don't get nearly enough recognition. And then there's poor Torna's cast, which has been sent to the Shadow Realm with how overlooked they are, thanks to it being a side expansion of this game, but I want to change that. For my channel at least. While I personally think that the original cast of Xenoblade is filled with S-tier characters, except Charla, who is A, maybe B tier if I think about it too much, I'm gonna go ahead and rank the playable cast of characters in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, including Torna the Golden Country, and see if they're as good as their original counterparts, or if they didn't meet the expectations set by their predecessors. Fair warning. I'm going to spoil the plot of 2 throughout this video, so if you're watching this, I'm assuming you've either played this game or you watched some guy on YouTube play it. You've been warned. I'm also going to be referring to a lot of moments in Xenoblade Chronicles 1, as that's the best direct comparison we have for this cast, but I won't explicitly spoil anything. This isn't my way of trying to slight 2, as it does have an identity of its own, and I do believe that this game can stand on its own merits, but when you have a 2 in your name, you're gonna get compared to the game whose name you added the number 2. I know that annoys some people, so I'm just being upfront that I'll be doing that in this video. As for the format, I'm going to go over the drivers first in 2, and then the main cast of Torna, and we'll be covering them in the order they appear in, more or less. If you want to see what I think about the story-relevant blades of 2, I've already made that video years ago, so go ahead and check that out after you're done with this one. So, strap in folks, as we're going to be talking about 15 characters? Oh, sweet architect, that's 50% more than what I normally do. Alright. Let's get into it. As if my intro didn't make it clear enough, we're starting this video with a controversial character as we gotta talk about Rex. When I first beat the game, I definitely wasn't fond of Rex, and part of that was due to just how great Shulk was. Shulk was a breath of fresh air for JRPG protagonists, as the only ones I'd seen up to that point were either silent protagonists or protagonists who I wish stayed silent. Even to this day, Shulk stands out as one of the best protagonists in a JRPG, as he started out as a lovable nerd and ends the journey as a hardened badass. In terms of voice work, Adam Howden's performance has already been praised to high heaven, and you don't have to wait long to see why people love it so much, as this I'll kill you! Takes like 2 hours to see. So following that wasn't Rex, but rather Cross, but Cross is a Persona protagonist plopped into a Xenoblade game that adds literally nothing of value to the story, so Rex is the real successor, and well, he definitely makes a strong first impression. For the majority of the game, Rex is a plucky young boy who is hoping to fulfill his dream of reaching Elysium. This lasts for about an hour as Jin stabs Rex in the back. After having literally died from too much edge, Rex becomes Pyra's driver, magically gets half her life force, a power never explained again in the plot, and now has the chance to pursue his dreams, albeit with a different motive. Initially, all Xenoblade protagonists have a goal to reach the far-off destination in their box art, Mechonis for Shulk, Elysium for Rex, and Sword March for Noah and Mio. While Shulk is driven by blind revenge at first, his motives do change, but I won't say why as to not spoil one's story. Just know that he has a good reason that gives him a phenomenal character arc. Rex's motives, on the other hand, flip-flop multiple times throughout the story, and I think this is why he gets a bad rap. Initially, Rex tells Nia at the start of the game that he wants to see Elysium because it might end the conflicts of Allrest. Okay, simple and idealistic, a perfect summary of Rex. After becoming Pyra's driver, however, his reasoning changes from hope to loyalty. Rex's desire to go to Elysium is now because Pyra, and eventually Mythra, want to go there, and, well, he does literally owe his life to them. The fact that he's madly in love with his trusty busty blade is more of a bonus. However, becoming the Aegis's driver does cause Rex to get a big head because of the power and admiration that comes with that, which is fine, but this lasts for about 3/4 into the game. This is why many people, me included, didn't like Rex that much because while he does get stopped multiple times in his journey, he either gets bailed out by someone or doesn't learn from his actions. Shulk had a similar arc, but they didn't drag it out for nearly as long as they did with Rex. This brings me to the second time his motive shift, albeit briefly. After getting curb stomped by Jin and Tantal, with no one able to save them this time, Pyra was forced to sacrifice herself to spare the party. Once Rex recovers from this loss, he doesn't try to get Pyra back at first. No, he wants to return to his life as a salvager, making this the second shift of his desires, one that feels almost like a regression, as he's willing to throw in the towel just because Pyra and Mythra are no longer in the picture. The pity party doesn't last long, as Brigid, Nia, and Poppy all, quite literally, smack some sense into him before the King of Tantal summons the gang and gives Rex the push he needs by revealing the existence of the third Aegis sword. Speaking of thirds, this marks Rex's third shift back to his initial goal of wanting to help Pyra and Mythra reach Elysium, but this time it's a bit different. And how it's different is best explained by Adam when Rex beats his spirit in the Crucible.
You are greedy, boy. When you take on the weight of all the fear she carries, then you will be her true driver.
Greed is the intense and selfish desire for something, typically power. If you were to summarize Rex's character in one word, it wouldn't be naivety, it wouldn't be optimism, it would be greed. After meeting with Adam's spirit, Rex realizes that he can unlock the Aegis' true power, which he's going to need to fulfill that long list of desires that he has. Once he reaches Pyra again, he does what no one else has been able to do for all of Numa's life, and that's fully accept her. Rex says he's going to Elysium for them, but that's because his greed doesn't just stop at himself. It extends to the well-being of all of his loved ones. This reflects an organic progression of growth because originally, Rex just wanted to get to Elysium, and being devoted to his blade was the best way to do so in his mind. He does worry about his friends and family, but they were secondary to his burning desire towards Pyra. By the end of the game, however, once the gang reaches the Architect, Rex is confronted with the reality he fears most. What would happen if his individual desires were satiated, but no one else's? The answer to that breaks Rex, as he can't comprehend this reality, as that was never in his plans, but it's something he now confronts for the first time. A world where only he is happy while everyone is miserable isn't enough for him. If he is going to be happy, then Rex needs his family to be happy, he needs his friends to be happy, and he needs the world to be happy because that's genuinely what he wants. This is the answer that Rex gives to Malos at the end of the game when trying to get him to stop destroying Allrest. I've thrown around the word desire a lot in this part, but that's because that word is what makes Rex a great protagonist. Just like the heroes before him, he managed to take a negative aspect of himself and turn it into a positive one, as his selfish desire became so large and earnest that he was finally able to become the hero Allrest needed, and it's because of this progression that I say Rex is truly an S-tier protagonist who is worthy to uphold the Xenoblade protagonist mantle. I promise the rest of these segments won't be nearly as long as the Rex one because none of the other ones are going to require as much justification. Now, we're going to talk about Best Girl. I kinda talked about Nia in the past, but I basically just said she's Melia 2.0, which doesn't do her nearly enough justice. Going into Nia's backstory based on the information we have in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Nia was a rare healer blade that was awakened by a bigwig in the Gormati government who was trying to save his daughter from a rare disease. He ultimately failed and forced Nia to become a flesh eater by merging with his daughter and raised her as though she was his own. Eventually, Indol caught wind of this and killed him for creating a flesh eater, giving Nia a chance to bond with Dromark and attempt to flee Gormott. However, she was ultimately captured. After Jin freed her, she joins Torna as it's a place she can belong as a flesh eater. Given that Nia is a healer, however, she is trying to keep the murder to a minimum, hence why she's against killing Rex and joins him, albeit accidentally. When it comes to Nia's personality, she's very sarcastic and that makes her interactions with the other party members very memorable. Whether she's ripping into Rex or taking the piss out of Zeke with her nicknames, Nia gets your attention from the start, and seeing as she's your early game healer, you kinda need her. There's also the whole flesh eater thing I've touched upon earlier. I mentioned the foreshadowing in my past video, but this is hinted at so many times in the story. When you encounter Akos for the first time, you can feel Nia's pain as he taunts her for sticking with Rex despite them not knowing her secret and fearing she might lose them if they found out. This indecisiveness is ultimately what gets Vandam killed, as Nia probably could have saved him if she revealed her true form, but she hesitated. That little run she does to try and help but stops and clutches her core crystal just conveys so many emotions at once and shows how she's still unable to accept herself at this time. Eventually, Nia learns to trust the party more and more as she builds up the confidence to take a bath with Mythra, exposing her core crystal, and trusting her to keep Nia's secret, which she does. Nia also slowly warms up to Morag and buries the hatchet with her, and ends up reviving the Emperor of Morardain, her younger cousin, who sacrificed himself, albeit unnecessarily, but hey, at least he's noble. Then there's the dynamic with Zeke that she made before he even joins the party by calling him Shaled enough times. All these bonding moments do come with the cost of the lives of others she met, but when they're in the depths of the Crucible and the party's about to get Everberoed to death, Nia's actions match her words.
No. No more. I won't hide any longer. I won't hide who I am. No more!
At this point, I'd like to remind you that this revelation happens in Chapter 7, titled The Fear She Carries, which does refer to how Rex takes on Pyra and Mythra's fear to awaken to their true form, but this title also applies to Nia. Nia was fearful that no one could accept her status as a flesh eater, so she hid this part of her. She saw someone die in front of her because of this fear, but when faced with this decision again, she decides to act, albeit in secret. The third time Nia is compelled to use her power, she doesn't just reveal her true self, no. She lays it all out on the table and confesses to Rex, the lucky bastard! But she knows that his heart is with Pyra, quite literally if you think about it too much, and she comes to terms with her new reality as she's comfortable in her own pointy blade shoes and can finally accept herself. Nia's a relatable character to many people because insecurity is something everyone deals with at some level. And Nia's resolution is so powerful because it shows that no matter what you might be facing, so long as you have the support you need, you too can conquer your inner demons. Still kinda salty that being best girl in the game means she has to get denied by the writers even though Rex turning her down makes him.
Bloody idiot!
At this point, I doubt anyone's gonna disagree with me on this placement. Easy S tier. When it comes to Nopon party members, you only got two choices. You can pick the Chad Ricky, who is the only Xenoblade member who has canonically fucked at this point, has 14 kids, and even adopted a Nopon orphan without hesitation, and was able to happily provide for him by giving him a loving family. Or you can choose the Virgin Tora, who is a massive fucking weeaboo. Tora is a Nopon inventor who decided to build an artificial blade after he is unable to become a driver. After helping Tora essentially create life, he joins the party as a playable member, which you bench whenever you can until you get Cutie Pie. Yeah, despite Tora not having 3 driver slots until you complete the longest non-blade side quest in the game, I say he's a great addition to the party. He joins Rex because he wants to find his father, who he believes to be alive despite the Tirken mob being hired for a hit on him. Eventually, Tora does find his father and his personal artificial blade, who attacks the party as she's being controlled by Banna. Poppy is able to overpower Lila thanks to her bond with Tora, and after that, she gets a new form which concludes Tora's role in the story. Alright, obligatory one comparison. Does Tora do more in the story than Ricky? Absolutely. But do I like him more than Ricky? While I do like Tora's character since I love his humor as he's rather blunt, Ricky just hit different. Ricky only joins the party because his village kicks him out, but he sticks with them because it's the best way for him to ensure his kids' well-being, showing how dedicated a father he is. And then there's Kino, who makes him even better with the added context he provides to Ricky in Future Connected. My biggest issue with Tora is his lack of involvement post Chapter 4, because Morag joins you in the literal next fight in the story, and while she may have trash gear, you just bench Tora from Chapter 5 onwards. Poppy Cutie Pie may be the most broken thing I've seen in gaming, and I've seen Crownzation, so that is saying something. Those are Poppy pluses for me, not so much Tora's. Tora is the first A tier on the list as he adds good chemistry to the party, is very powerful late game, and he does have a solid character arc, but I just wish he added more past the conclusion of said arc. Next up, we have the Special Inquisitor of Morag is probably what a lot of you thought I was gonna say, but instead we have the true fourth party member, Vandam. Vandam initially attacks the party, but he just wanted to have a go at the Aegis and test out her power. After that, he joins the party to help them reach the Orion capital to meet his old war buddy Cole, who he thinks might have a hint on helping them get to the World Tree. Torna catches wind of this, resulting in a fight against Malus and Akos, which the party is just not winning. In an attempt to buy some time, Vandam impales himself with Rock's dual sights in order to become a living weapon, only it's not enough. Malos is an Aegis and he stops Vandam no problem, killing him on the spot. If you're experienced with RPGs, this probably isn't the first time you've seen a party member killed, but the way Monolith handled this death is spectacular. While there are some clear signs that Vandam was gonna bite the bullet, namely his inability to bond with Blades despite being a proper driver, it genuinely caught me and many other players off guard because you didn't think the game had the guts to kill off a character mid-boss fight, but they did. Just hearing Vandam scream out to Rex to "Fight your war!" only for him to be struck down by Malos the next moment sets the stakes for the rest of the game. It makes you realize that there is a lot that the story still has to offer, as this moment hit just as hard for me as the attack on Colony 9. While Vandam is no longer in the party, you still learn more about him as you do side quests, as you eventually learn that he's an Orion noble who ran away from his station, and even had a kid at one point who had already died. So Vandam's had a lot of experience up until this point, but sadly he wasn't meant to stick around as Rex's mentor. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a very slow burn at the start. I mean, it took a whole 20 hours for me to reach this moment, but having this lead to the awakening of Mythra, setting up Nia's arc, and finally having Rex's growth kickstarted, plot device Vandam may be in now 2 games, but I say he's a damn good one. I'm hesitant to give him S tier because of this, because his purpose was just to die, so I think I'll just put him down in A tier. Alright, now we talk about everyone's favorite hat-wearing party member in Xenoblade 2, the Special Inquisitor, the Flamebringer, the wielder of the Jewel of Morag, Morag le Dare. Morag is a bit of a unique character in comparison to the rest of the party in that her backstory isn't that long-winded. I mean, there's her relationship to the Emperor as his older cousin, and the fact that Morag was originally going to be the Emperor, but Niall's birth put a wrench into that plan. Despite having the throne taken from her, Morag is fine with this as she loves her country and will gladly serve as its Special Inquisitor. She fights the party in Chapter 2 after trying to stop the Aegis from sinking another 3 Titans, and once again in Alba Cavendish after believing Rex is committing petty crimes, but once she sees that their goals are earnest, she joins the party in Chapter 5 because we don't talk about Morag in this fight. Morag's primary reason for joining the party is hoping to see something incredible happen by being near the driver of the Aegis. Spoiler alert, she does, and that's really it. She still has her nuance as Special Inquisitor, what with her dry sense of humor that I love.
Do you actually have a plan, or is that too much to expect?
And the fact that she can be incredibly intimidating at times too.
Shit! Who gave that damn order?
Mix this with the pain you hear in her voice when she reacts to Niall's sacrifice, and you see a woman who may not show her emotion often, but she clearly isn't soulless, and this is how a well-written stoic character should be. The thing is, I think I just don't like stoic characters in JRPGs as much. As Morag is the dodge tank of the party, I guess you can say she's like Dumban in the original title, but I wouldn't describe him as stoic, more so serious. There are hints of Melia in her as Morag is royalty, probably because Kallian is one of the best side characters in any video game story, period, whereas Niall's support comes in the form of a Gion, who does absolutely nothing for the plot. Don't let these comparisons let you think Morag isn't her own character, because she definitely is. I just don't think she's my cup of tea. For the sake of not putting her lower than Charla for me mentally, I'll give her a solid A tier because I do think she deserves it. S tier. The easiest S tier placement for me on this list. Yes, even more than the character I dropped $300 for a figure of because who needs rent? Please remember to purchase waifu figures responsibly, aka kids, do the exact opposite of what I do. Ozikliris Brunev Tantal is a name I didn't have to look up, unlike Aquila Parnet Sol Esteriol, probably butcher that because yo hablo inglés, and how can you forget anything about the Zekenator? He's charming, strong, smart, worldly, goofy but in a good way, mature, and easily the strongest party member in the game, as half of the weapon classes are best on him, and this isn't even going into the DLC. Oh, Zeke, just give me that steaming meat already! Alright, now that I'm done eating that burger, let me get back to sucking this man off. You'll get your turn after, Pandy! Zeke is the crown prince of Tantal, who was disowned and banished from the kingdom at the age of 15, the same age Rex is in the game. With nothing but the clothes on his back and his blade Pandoria by his side, Zeke goes on a journey during which he learns of the world's cruelty. As the years go by, Zeke gradually loses the hope he had in saving the world and becomes way more cynical in his outlook. Eventually, he runs into bandits who are trying to take Pandoria, and they leave him badly wounded. Pandoria tries to carry him to safety, but she ultimately fails and collapses, hoping that her next driver will be a kind one. When she comes to, however, she learns that they're in the Praetorium and that half her core crystal is missing, but her memories are intact. This is because Amalthus saved the duo by turning Zeke into a Blade Eater to save him in exchange for having a powerful driver in his pocket. Zeke obliges since, well, he has nothing better to do, and is ordered to keep watch of Rex. While on duty, the Bringer of Chaos is depicted as a complete imbecile who is so unlucky that he might as well be cursed, but that's because he wasn't trying yet. Only after Morag reveals his identity to the party does he turn on the heat and become an actual threat. After this final encounter, Zeke thankfully joins the party and is the greatest addition ever. With all that said though, traditionally speaking, Zeke should be the main character of the game. He's got the tragic backstory, shares a direct relationship with the main villain of the game, and has the maturity to handle the complex situation Ulrist is in, but he isn't. Zeke is still a powerful driver, the strongest of the party barring Rex once he unlocks Numa's power, but there's more to him than his power. Despite his strength and maturity, Zeke isn't really a mentor for Rex, or anything even like that. He's his own character with his own goals, and while he may have left the kingdom, Zeke still cares about his people and wants to find a way to save them. Tantal is a nation that is gripped by poverty due to its frigid climate, and its people are given very little to work with as a result. The situation is so bad that there's a black market held right in front of the castle, and the guards don't even bother to do anything about it since they know that the people need this. Zeke wants to know why his father is such a crappy ruler, and when he finally learns the truth, his father reveals the secret that the Tantalese have hidden for 500 years, which is that their claims of being the descendants of Adam are bogus. Considering the pride Zeke had in his lineage, a discovery like this would be something that might push a man to dire action. After all, we saw what such a reveal did to the awful founder of this nation. However, unlike most people, Zeke is well-traveled and has seen the world. He is fully aware of its callousness and the indifference it feels towards the suffering of others. So, despite having his understanding of his birthplace flipped on its head, this doesn't change Zeke's actions in any way. The maturity Zeke developed on his travels made him realize that he doesn't need to care about lineage or history to make a change in the world, and after seeing Rex's desire to change the world, that will to try is more than enough for him. Zeke is a nuanced character who I wish had more opportunities to show his serious side, but he really is just comedy gold. Zeke may mask his intentions with flamboyant theatrics, but at his core, he's a hero who cares about his people and has reignited his will to fight for them, and that's why I say Xenoblade goes into S tier. With the main cast of 2 out of the way, we now move on to Torna, but for the purposes of, well, my sanity as I'm my own editor, I'm going to cover the remaining 9 characters in groups. So we'll cover Team Laura, then Team Adam, and end with Team Hugo, since these characters are all a package deal. So let's get into the main character of Torna the Golden Country, not the hero of all rest, but rather Jin's final driver, Laura. We see glimpses of Laura in the main game through Jin's memories, and how she accidentally bonded with him when she was just 10 years old, forcing her to become a runaway and split from her mother. But what was the personality of someone who had to go through all that hardship? Well, within the first minute of seeing her, she not only roundhouses a Volf perfectly into a tree, but she also does a flying knee into one's face, and then proceeds to punt it into oblivion. Chiesa Tanaka would be proud of her fellow short-haired queen with kicks for days. As for why Laura chooses to fight with the whip in her fists, she developed this mixed fighting style which is now the foundation of blade combat in the base game, because she was too broke to afford her own weapon. Yeah, we're already off to a strong start, but to better understand Laura, I need to cover Jin's character given how intertwined they are. Jin was a character I didn't originally like in the base game. Why? He was just way too edgy for me. Literally every time he showed up on screen, all my brain could do was this. It doesn't help that his Japanese VA is literally Sephiroth's. I mean, come on, Monolith knew what they were doing. Emo, white-haired boy that commits mass murder because of his love for a prominent female figure in his life that he outlives? I think. I understand Sephiroth's backstory. Jin's motives didn't really make any sense to me when playing the base game. But now we have Torna to better flesh him out. So, do we get a better understanding of his motives and what he was like before this transformation? Well, we learned that Jin's a great cook, so that's a plus. However, Torna fills you in on 2 key aspects of Jin's character that are integral to his being. The first is that he hates fighting, despite being one of the strongest blades in existence. This is something mentioned in the base game, but you see how deep that belief is ingrained into him throughout Torna. The second thing we learn is that he is deeply devoted to his driver, and with how perfect Laura is, who can blame him? Jin is upset with the fact that he will live on without the memories of his last driver whenever they pass, so he tries to find a way to keep the bond between driver and blade alive, even past the driver's death. This leads to Jin discovering the knowledge of how to become a flesh eater, and we all know how that one turned out.
I ate her.
I'm sorry. I don't think any voice direction could make this line not sound hilariously awkward. The reason Jin made that decision, however, is testament to how much he loved Laura, and, well, the feeling was clearly mutual, much to Hayes' dismay.
I am who I am. I do not change. Laura, you okay? What happened?
You got me right here. My heart's pounding! Jin, you didn't even realize, did you? Sometimes you'll say something and I'll just swoon.
But...
I don't think any girl could refuse you.
No, I didn't mean to.
Nuh-uh! You're smooth and you know it.
Considering that this scene plays after the flashback that you see in the base game, makes it just that much funnier. So, now that we all know Laura is amazing, I'm gonna go more into her backstory this time. After being forced to run away from her mother, Laura goes on a 17-year-long journey looking for her and it's not a happy ending. Laura learns that her mother was in Tora, but by the time she gets there, the village has been razed to ashes, and she finds her mother's recently made grave and gets attacked by her mother's abuser after just starting to mourn. Jin stops him, but before dealing the killing blow, Laura tells him to stop and let him live. Jin's character being given context through Laura fleshes him out so well as you see the bond they shared and how having that taken away from him due to one man's malice drove him to madness. While I think most sane human beings wouldn't agree with Jin's actions, a good character doesn't have to be one you like, but one you understand. Jin and his adorable driver, who is the second best Xenoblade protagonist at this point, are both S-tier characters. Alright, now I gotta talk about Haze somehow. Haze is a flaming lesbian for Laura and is somewhat scary if you get between her and her driver, and doesn't really have any impact on the story. She's also one of the weaker party members in terms of gameplay in Torna, but her death is way more tragic now in the base game with the context that she's just a very sweet girl who loves her driver and was corrupted by Amalthus of all people who co-opted her power for himself, so... B tier? Yeah, we'll go with B tier. Now we go over Team Adam, which is a similar story to Team Laura in that we have two incredibly important characters to the story, and then a third one who is neat. Let's start with Adam and his backstory. Adam Origo is the bastard son of the Tornin king. Despite being fourth in line for the throne, he became the people's pick for the next king. He earned this support by being an all-around good guy who is an actual competent leader. That said, he got a little bit too popular in the eyes of the masses, and thus he was put in charge of what is essentially the Tornin boonies as a way to keep his adoration in check. That didn't stop Adam from keeping order among his subjects, as he's the type of guy who doesn't let things like titles or status get in the way of making genuine connections with his subjects. So it's no wonder he's so beloved, as even the Tornin king recognizes that he's the better pick for ruler than his waste of space brother Zetter, who didn't even have the potential to bond with the Aegis. Speaking of which, let's talk about Mythra now. We all know Mythra as the tsundere who is Pyra's other half, and while polling data showed that fans preferred Pyra to Mythra almost 2-1, I think it's safe to say that Torna flipped this sentiment. At least I know Sakurai still has my back. So, what happens in Torna that caused this popularity shift? As you progress through Torna, you piece together more of her relationship with Adam. We know that Malos turned out batshit insane because Amalthus was fueled by hatred, so why is Mythra a bitchy hothead when Adam is relatively even-keeled? Fear. The whole reason Adam awakens to Mythra and not Numa as he should have is because Adam was terrified of becoming the Aegis' driver. After seeing the destruction Malos is capable of and believing that not even his driver can stop it, Adam is worried that awakening the other Aegis might lead to the same wanton destruction. This fear causes him to awaken to a weaker version of the Aegis that captures his fears not just for the world, but for his future. What do I mean by this? Well, if you complete every side quest in Torna, which is very tedious I might add, you are rewarded with the knowledge that Adam, like Ricky, has canonically fucked. The whole time you were trying to stop Malos from nuking Torna, Adam had a pregnant wife who expected to bear his child soon, which he hopes is a daughter. Now, if you were a father, I think you would be worried about having a daughter in a revealing outfit, acting like a brat all the time, and their inability to make anything edible. This fear is what causes Mythra to go berserk in the climax of Torna. In Xenoblade Chronicles 1, we see something similar with how the Minato rejects Dunban's body, but he's too much of a bamf to care about the consequences, resulting in the loss of his right arm. The same thing sort of happens to Adam as he can't pick up Mythra's true Minato. This lack of control causes not only Torna to sink, but for 2 other titans to fall, and for countless lives to be lost, including Milton's. Milton was a character who was added into Torna despite never being mentioned in the base game, so you knew full well that his odds of survival were 0. While I personally didn't care about Milton because, come on, you knew he was gonna die, there's no denying that Mythra did as she saw him as a little brother. Learning that her inability to control her power caused him to die is what breaks her. This causes Mythra to develop a split personality, which we know as Pyra. A personification of what Mythra thinks the perfect girl would be. A caring but soft-spoken person that can cook great food and is nice to everyone, but cannot use the destructive power of the artifices because it may bring harm to others. In other words, she developed Pyra after aspects of Team Laura, right down to even taking Laura's short red hair. Mythra became the best character of the entire cast of 2 with this reveal, and Monolith handled it perfectly. If I had something beyond S tier, like a triple S tier, I'd put Mythra in it, but we'll just put her in S where she belongs. That said, I also like that this explanation explains more of Pyra's character, as she's a dissociative identity of Mythra who exists just to handle her problems while bearing all the trauma as a result of her creation. This makes Pyra so much more tragic to me, and is why I still like her more, as she just got dealt one of the worst hands in existence. Now, I know I have to talk about Minoth here too, but to keep it brief, Minoth was originally Amalthus's blade, who later became a flesh eater. Once Minoth learned of Amalthus's hatred towards humanity, he just screws off and joins the party and becomes Adam's cowboy gunslinger blade, who has a bunch of Spanish names for his moves, and I think he's awesome. Minoth isn't just all flair though, as he's rather direct and blunt, as we see with his decision to abandon Amalthus, but he knows how to handle sensitive situations well, and that is what would make him a talented playwright in the events of the main game. We know Rex asked him to write a play about Vandam, which we know he did, as this play would inspire Guinervica, or whatever his name is here, to bring both factions of the Party of 3 together and push them to uncover the truth of their conflict and learning more about the console. So yeah, Minoth is actually really important for the story of 3 games in the series, and fleshing him out in Torna was the right move. Overall, I think his connection with Adam is solid, and the 2 bring out good moments in each other, so I'll give both Adam and Minoth an A tier slot in this list. Normally, you don't save the least for last, but sadly that's what I've done with Team Hugo. Similar to Milton, the moment you see Hugo and realize that he's just playable Nile, you remember how he bit the dust in the base game, and how there's no Welsh cat girl to save him in this one. While Hayes is technically a healer, that's not really how her power works. So yeah, I don't have the strongest thoughts on Hugo since I knew not to get attached to him, but he's still a very charming character. The little warrior is the best tank in all of Xenoblade 2 since he has, wait for it, an art that draws in aggro. Seriously, why wasn't this added to the base game? I know I haven't mentioned combat for the rest of the Torning crew, but that's because I don't have the space, and they're all DPSs except for Hayes. Hugo's addition to the team as the tank makes it so that your party isn't just dead on arrival in any fight, and he's added to give context to Bridget's involvement in the Aegis War, and seeing how minor it really is. I really wish I had more to say about Team Hugo, but besides the fact that Adam and Hugo were very close childhood friends, despite being royalty to different nations, and the fact that they share an epic brotherly bond that transcends blood, there's not much there for him. Hugo's sacrifice in protecting Adam is much more noble with this context, but you knew this was coming, and Hugo isn't a major actor in the events that unravel in the Aegis War, hence why his name is nowhere to be seen in the base game. So yeah, Hugo's a good boy, so I'll give him B tier. Bridget is still cracked, and has a bit of snark to match Hugo's personality, which is refreshing and shows a side of him that he typically keeps hidden, so I'll put her Torned appearance in B2. And finally, there's Aegeon. Aegeon gets the only C tier spot in this list, and it really should be D since he adds literally nothing of value to the story, and is even the weakest party member in Torna, given how unnecessary water is as an element, as you can just make Laura use a water weapon, and Bridget is a better tank than him in this game as well as the base game. I really don't feel like making it a Aegeon tier, even though I kind of have, but I'll just leave him at the bottom since he's not a detriment to the cast. And with all that said and done, I'm finally finished covering the playable cast of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and its expansion Torna the Golden Country, which is something I've wanted to do for years. Let me know what you guys think in the comments and where you would move some characters around. Was I too nice in my rankings overall? Or do you think there were some more characters I should have given more attention to? Let me know your thoughts in the comments as we all journey into Xenoblade 3 with the memories and expectations of the previous games. Alright now, hope to see you guys after I'm done with that game. Peace.